Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we're taking a look at Go Collect's hottest trending comics for the week of October 9th. Now, for those who don't know, Go Collect puts out weekly articles. They analyze the hottest selling comic books based on volume of sales and set an increase in movement in the market. So think of these 5 books as the most liquid this past week. But of course, before I get into it, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe. Also, a few housekeeping things. If you really want to support the channel, head on over to SwaggleHouseComics.com. Pick up a copy of Sanity. You know, we still have issue number 1 available in cover A form here. We're approaching Halloween. Maybe you want to pick up a cool Lovecraftian noir detective horror book. You know, that'd be kind of fun to add to your collection. Support me. I would definitely appreciate it. SwaggleHouseComics.com. Also, we got channel memberships to talk about. Yeah, that's right. I'm jumping into the channel membership train here. We got different tiers that you guys can be a part of. Some cool emojis to check out. You know, some early access to the comic book index and questions answered. You know, if you need some tips on your comic book collecting journey. Also got the merch store going on right here. If you want to pick up a Swaggle t-shirt, maybe we'll go to the moon with this one right here, or my personal favorite, the Swaggle mug. You know, one morning you can wake up on Team Moon Boys, and the next morning you can wake up on Team Bear Bros. So depending on how you're feeling, any given day, you can express your feelings on the state of the comic book market. But speaking of Team Moon Boys, we got to get into the article here today. Of course, this article is written by Matt Tuck. I will put a link in the description if you guys want to do your own reading, but I will break down the 5 books on Team Moon Boys right now. And of course, the first book we got to talk about is this very cool one right here, Batman number 608, second print, new to the list this week, now squeaking in there in the 99th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, it's the book that came out in 2002, written by Jeff Loeb and drawn by Jim Lee, that would feature the now iconic Batman cover by Jim Lee. Now, of course, as Matt points out in the article, Batman has been hot out there in the market, as it always is. Batman, of course, is maybe the number 1 superhero in all of the comic book collecting market. And this book right here has become kind of one of the Batman, at least more modern grails that people like to collect. There's, of course, a lot of excitement still with the James Gunn universe. I mean, we still don't know what is necessarily going to be happening. We still have to get past Aquaman. It'll be interesting to see what the reaction is to that movie here. But once James Gunn's projects get off the ground, of course, he's going to be having Batman show up in The Brave and the Bold. We also have the Otherworld movie with Batman. So, you know, Batman is always going to be a superhero within the conscience of pop culture. Even if we don't have cinematic franchises, there's always going to be some kind of Batman 10 film, and Batman is always going to be collected. And to dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. 9/8 have 535 on the census, fair market value 725, 30-day moving 711. And actually, I would say for a book that is fairly modern, you know, 2002 or so, 535 isn't all that bad. I mean, of course, it's a relative number, but this is definitely a book that people love to have. And actually, it's been one that is slowly and steady increased over the years. I mean, of course, it got its biggest spike in December, shooting up here in 2021. So you have to wonder if maybe it is still a little bit hot. Although, you know, towards the end of 2020, it was at that $500 level. Now people have been picking it up for $500 occasionally, $580, $560, $675. And maybe that's really why it is showing up on the list this week, because based on the sort of year-over-year returns for this book, it seems like people are definitely willing to roll the dice on this one. Of course, not going to see the slab at the low grade because it is a modern book. But when you go onto eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically I see them being sold around that $150 to $200, maybe $300 range, depending on the deal and depending on the grade. All right, let's move on now to the 4th hottest trending comic of the week. And the 4th hottest trending comic of the week is another Batman book. This one is really cool to see and also sort of makes sense when we focus in on the James Gunn effect. But this one, of course, is Batman number 635, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 86th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this is the book that came out in 2005, written by Judd Winnick, that would feature the first appearance of Jason Todd as the Red Hood. Now, a lot of people have been speculating that we are going to be getting, you know, Red Hood in possibly, you know, the James Gunn universe. Maybe people are saying that in the Otherworld movie with Pattinson, we might be getting the Red Hood in that universe as well. A lot of people are thinking like, okay, we might get Jason Todd in some form, so maybe they'll eventually build to the Red Hood story. Now, of course, this is also like the Jim Lee one, just another great sort of modern grail Batman cover. I mean, the cover art is beautiful. It's one that people love to collect, so it's always going to be a book that is is sort of celebrated out there. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. 2,512 universal copies on the census. 9.8 has 969. Fair market value 325. 30-day moving 289. Now, unlike the previous book, this is one that is maybe a little bit harder to sort of prove those year-over-year returns on it, because it is a book that has twice as many 9.8s on the census. You can see this is a book that got inflated in 2016 due to speculation, had its pullback, was actually pretty flat for a while, got inflated once again in 2021, and it's also had its pullback. So, the overall floor has been risen from where this book was a few years back, and it might take another sort of a significant cultural effect for the floor to be risen once again. I'm sure we'll see graphs that are similar to this, where it gets lifted and then it corrects, and then overall the floor is higher. But based where it is right now, I have a feeling that people are just willing to pull the trigger on this one. I mean, if you're getting a great cover buy for under $300 in a 9.8 level for a effective first appearance of a character, I think that you're not going to do too bad overall. And then of course at the bottom, not going to see it slabbed to low grade because it's a modern book, but when you go into eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically you can see them being sold around that, again, 100 to 150, maybe 200, maybe $250 level, depending on the deal and depending on the grade. All right, let's move on now to the third hottest trending comic of the week. And the third hottest trending comic of the week is a very interesting one that kind of brings a smile to my face and is curious to see on this list this week. But of course, we're talking about Avengers #2, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 65th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, it's the book that came out in 1963, written by Stan Lee, that would feature the second appearance of the Avengers. Now, I got to say that this book is a little bit of a shock. It's actually one that I think the market often forgets about. I mean, I think, the Avengers #1 issue, obviously one of my favorite Silver Age Marvel books, is also kind of in an interesting spot because it's not a technical character first appearance. It's really the team first appearance. So a lot of people, kind of overlook that factor. And then you have the fact that this is the second appearance of that team appearance. So this is a book that kind of gets overlooked, but it is a very, very cool one. Early Avengers. Maybe people don't like the cover on this one as much. It's a little bit more kitschy, but it's kind of a throwback to the Golden Age with all that yellow on it. Of course, it also is the first appearance of the Space Phantom. I mean, a very deep cut. I suppose you can say never with the possibility of the Space Phantom, having some comic book crossover event or appearing in the MCU at some point in the future, but I definitely wouldn't hold my breath. Either way, this is a very cool early Avengers book. It's still a 1963 book, which I feel like, if you get those Silver Age books that are pre-1964, the 63 and 62 ones are still pretty tough out there in the market. And as we dig into the numbers for this book, let's take a look at some of the values here. 2,198 universal copies on the census. Not too many overall, but that's not to say that there couldn't be more. 9.8s have 5 on the census. Fair market value suggests 28,000, although there hasn't been a sale in quite some time. 9.4 had a sale for 6,300 about a year ago. 9.0 having a 90-day sale at the $3,000 range. But let's go down here to the 7.0 to see what is going on in the last month. 144 on the census, 1150 fair market value, but 780 on the 30-day moving. Then of course down here at the bottom, you might see it slabbed at the low grade, but I would say that between the 4.0 to the 2.5, you can see it's kind of hovering around that $300 to $400 level. And I would say that that's pretty accurate overall, because when you go into eBay looking for raw copies, I mean, typically even at the low grade, it's going to set you back around that $300 price point, maybe $350, and of course, depending on the deal and depending on the grade. All right, let's move on now to the second hottest trending comic of the week. And the second hottest trending comic of the week is maybe no surprise right here, a book that I didn't actually talk about in my other Dazzler videos, but this one, of course, is Dazzler #1, new to the list this week, now sitting in the 40th slot. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, it's the book that came out in 1981, written by Tom DeFalco. That would be the first issue and first solo series for everybody's favorite character, Taylor Swift. Of course, I'm just kidding. It's actually the first solo series for the character Dazzler. And I say Taylor Swift because we all know why this book is showing up on the list this week. Taylor Swift famously dating Travis Kelce, having her appearances at the NFL games, the pop culture effect. She's hanging out with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. And now all the Dazzler books are going crazy out there in the market. Of course, X-Men 130 is the first appearance, so that's always going to be the first book to move. But then, what ends up happening in all of these marketing conditions is that everybody then moves on to the next best thing. Like once, Dazzler's first appearance becomes too expensive, well, we got to move on to, the other key issues, first title, first solo series, second appearance, and things like that. So it would make sense that Dazzler #1 is going to be the one that moves after that. But, I wouldn't necessarily be somebody who was picking up this book, in any sort of speculative way. I mean, it's already extremely speculative that X-Men 130 will continue to go up at some point in the future. But if you really, really had to make a purchase on a Dazzler book, it still seems like X-Men 130 would be the one that you will want to get. But that's not to say that this isn't still a fun book to own, not a cool book, and not a very cool kind of painted cover, which of course I think makes this book pretty special just for that reason alone. And as we dig into the numbers for this one, let's take a look at some of the values here. Census has it at 1,474 universal copies. Don't be mistaken though, there could be a lot more once people decide to send all of their stacks of books in. 199 on the census. That is pretty interesting to see. 9/8 have 342, firm mark value 220, 30 moving 226. Definitely a book that has gone up in value ever since this hype right here. And you can actually see a book that got probably inflated back in the day from speculation, has been relatively flat for many, many years, got inflated in 2021. It's actually still above its 2021 COVID boom level. So in my personal opinion, if I could make a sale for this book, if this is one that I've had in my collection for a while, I would definitely consider making that sale based on where these numbers are here today. Then of course, down here at the bottom, not going to see it slabbed to the low grade, but when you go into eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically they sell now around that $40, $50, maybe $60 level, depending on the deal and depending on the grade. All right, let's move on now to the hottest trending comic of the week. And the hottest trending comic of the week is a very interesting one here. Again, pseudo related to the Ryan Reynolds Taylor Swift news. Of course, we're talking about all new Wolverine #1, new to the list this week, now in the 25th slot, shooting all the way up there. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, it's the book that came out in 2015, written by Tom Taylor, that would feature the first appearance of Laura Kinney as the Wolverine. Now, let me shrink this down here so you guys can get a better view of that cover. Of course, this is the book that had been really hot for a long time, heavily speculated on. You know, a lot of sort of these modern keys were really getting inflated during 2021 when the spec boom was going crazy. And now this one is making a little bit of a comeback due to the fact that, you know, we have all this excitement around Deadpool. We have all this talk of, you know, a multiverse and other Wolverines showing up. And a lot of people thinking that, you know, the Laura Kinney actress that was in the Logan film might make a return appearance in the Deadpool movie. And so a lot of people are like, oh, let me dust off those all new Wolverine #1s, or let me start to browse eBay once again to see if I can pick up a copy. And now this book has had a little bit of a bounce back, but it's one of those ones where, you know, you have to be a little bit careful. Obviously, I think Nick's #3, her actual first appearance, is really the book that most collectors want, that probably has a better chance for that book, you know, holding its floor value. This is a little one that's a little more niche, but could be a fun book to own because it is a cool cover. And if you're just somebody who is a fan of this character, probably looks really good on the shelf. But let's take a look at some of these numbers here. And as we dig into them, Universal Census has it at 1,436 copies. 9/8 have 1115. So very, very high 9/8 rate for this book. Fair market value is 100. 30-day moving is $89. So again, a book that really, really shot up in the speculation era of 2021. You can see basically doubling and tripling in price overnight, and it's had its big, big pullback, basically dropping down past the $100 price point. But you can see with the current news and current excitement, this book is now above that $100 price point, back in the three-figure club, 125, 100, etc. So an interesting one. I mean, again, not necessarily one that I think is going to be sort of the reliable go to the moon book. I mean, I think if you really want to go to the moon with Laura Kinney, which already that's going to be a tricky one to do, you probably want to pick up the Nick's books, but still a cool book to have in the collection. And then of course down here, not going to see it slapped at the low grade, but when you go into eBay looking for raw copies of this thing, typically you can see them being sold around that $20, $25, maybe $30 level, maybe $50 level, depending on the deal and depending on the grade that people are calling it. Anyways, that's all right for this video. Those were Go Collect's hottest trending comics for the week. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys have any of these books? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Help support the channel. Maybe pick up some of that merch. Maybe pick up a membership. Maybe go buy Sanity. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. See you all in the next video.